Join us as we revisit timeless classics, discover hidden gems, and embrace the future of film and television. This is Banter Fodder. I'm your host, Drew, joined by Michael and James. How are you guys doing today?
Doing good.
Doing pretty good.
Yeah, doing pretty good. You guys watch anything lately?
Yeah, yeah. Watched a movie.
Oh, yeah. What movie is that?
Well, we're gonna be talking about it, so I don't want to spoil it.
Oh, yeah. I mean, you might not be able to read the title that's down here below us. That that's not there. Just imagine that's not there. But yeah, so we're gonna be talking about Interstellar. If you don't know what Interstellar is, it was a film directed by the super underground director Christopher Nolan. You might have heard of him, maybe you haven't. I don't know. He's kind of like super indie. Um, but yeah, it was directed by Christopher Nolan. He recently did Oppenheimer, Tenet, Inception, all those good movies. And then Hoyt van Hoytema was the cinematographer, who also worked on Oppenheimer. He's like become a frequent collaborator ever since Interstellar, actually, with Christopher Nolan. So yeah, I guess before we like dive into the film, I just wanted to ask you guys, like what's your history with the movie? How did you like when did you first watch Interstellar, I guess?
Okay, so for me, so this movie is really interesting to me because uh, I feel like it changes a little bit as I watch it. Now, I watched this in the theater and I was absolutely blown away. I've been a big Christopher Nolan fan ever since I saw The Prestige. That's the earliest movie that I've seen. No, I'm sorry. No, Batman Begins is the earliest movie I've seen of his. But really became a fan of like who's this guy Christopher Nolan that directed. It's The Prestige that really got me hyped about him. And so I've seen every movie since Batman Begins in the theater of his, and I just remember being just I was blown away by the spectacle of it and like just the sheer bigness of it in the theater. But it definitely has taken me several times to watch it to really hone in what I think about it. And I know I was talking to you guys about this watched this when I watched this last week for this show, and I adore. I At that point I said I adore most of this movie. The ending is feels a little bit cold to me. Like for some reason I didn't connect with it emotionally, and it feels like a little bit it feels like a little bit detached. Even though I love the ideas that it's going for, but it wouldn't get like 5 stars if I was to rank it. But I actually did watch it, at least most of it, again today, just to make sure I remembered things and it was fresh in my mind. And I made sure I watched the ending again, and it hit hard for me this time. And so I wonder if I was just like tired or something because I did watch it really late. I gotta say, the the pure ambition of this film mixed with the technical mastery mixed with the emotional weight of it, now include the ending into that. I've always been emotionally invested in the characters. I think they're really well done. And I've always been there's a part in the middle of this movie that just hits so unbelievably hard. It's devastating. And I've always connected with that, but now I can say I connect with it pretty much all the way through emotionally. Couple of things that I would have a couple of questions about. We can talk about those later, but I adore this movie and I'm excited to get into the nitty gritty.
Yeah. So I when this came out, I'm trying to remember the circumstances for like why I didn't see this in the theater. Uh I I loved Batman Begins. I hadn't seen anything from him when Dark Knight came out, except I had like seen most of Batman Begins when it came out, and I remember liking it. And then the trailers for The Dark Knight were phenomenal, and I was like, "Oh man, I got to rewatch Batman Begins before I see this." And I rewatched that and fell in love with it. And then saw The Dark Knight in the theater, like became my favorite movie ever. Uh, and after that, like it was kind of like what you said, Michael, was just like, okay, it's a new Nolan movie. I'm gonna go see it. I think, and I hate to say this, this is 9 years ago So maybe like it's hard to remember specifically, but I think that when it came out, it's what in the 70s on Rotten Tomatoes,
Yeah.
and it's whenever like the Nolan is overrated stuff started to kind of like roll around on like social media and stuff. And if you've seen the honest trailers, the whole Hans Zimmer falling asleep on his piano jokes and stuff. It's just I hate to say it, but I think I may have gotten a smidge caught up in that and was like, I may not even see this one in the theater. So I didn't see the theater, and then like I don't know, maybe a year later, I watched it with some friends who loved it, and I just remember when it ended, I had never been so mad at myself. I was like, I robbed myself of seeing this on the big screen. Like it was a great experience watching it at home, but the first thing that went to my mind is like I would give to like see that on the freaking big screen. And I remember I bought the soundtrack immediately and was just like listening. That I was in college at the time, and that was like my study music. I was always throwing on that soundtrack while I went to the library and stuff. And just loved it ever since. I've got a couple of issues with it. Like Michael said, I'm sure this will come up as the conversation goes on. But by and large, uh, sheer ambition of this and the perfection in its craft and everything, like I can't help but kind of be in awe of most of this movie.
Yeah, no, for sure. I definitely agree. Um, I have an interesting history with it, and I already told you guys beforehand, but I did not see it in theaters whenever it came out, which is crazy because I'd seen like a lot of Nolan films in theaters beforehand, um, and I watched it like at home, and I absolutely hated it the first time I saw it. I thought it was super boring, and like I thought it was like the slowest movie I've ever seen. And I actually didn't rewatch it up until a few years ago. And I still had like this like feeling of like, oh man, this movie's gonna be so slow and boring and it's gonna suck. And then I finally rewatched it and I was like, gosh, I was a freaking idiot back then because it is so freaking good. Um I think like especially rewatching it like on this most recent rewatch, I'm like, dude, this movie like just it hits so hard. Like I I love everything about it. I've always been like super fascinated by like space travel and like stuff like that, and I love sci-fi. It's my favorite genre probably. Um, but I don't know. Then again, I might say horror on other days. Um, but yeah, I love everything about this movie. And I've it's a movie that I grew to love. It wasn't a movie that I loved at first sight, which is like super unusual because like most movies that I love, it's like one watch and I'm like, this is like a 10 out of 10 movie, you know? Um,
Mm.
so it was like it's a very unique experience that I've had with this film and like a really interesting history. So
Let's do it.
there are gonna be spoilers for the movie. So if you haven't seen it before, you should totally go watch it. But I'm assuming you've probably already seen it because the movie's been out for a long time now, almost 10 years, which is crazy. But yeah, go watch the movie
Oh
if
my
you haven't.
gosh.
um, so yeah, the film kind of starts with like these old people talking and like it kind of like sets the tone of like what's to come in the film, both with the bookshelf and like with the old people. It's kind of like a reflection of like what this story is about. This story is about time, which Nolan really likes making movies about time. That's kind of his thing. So you know, even with space travel, he's like, I gotta figure out a way to mess with time. um,
Yeah.
but yeah, so like having like these old people who like do not show up in the film like ever again. They're just kind of there. Uh, it kind of is a reflection of where the story goes because so much time passes, and it's also like the story itself is like very um like kind of paving a way for like the next generation essentially. That's kind of like one of the central themes I feel like. You're already introduced or you're introduced right away to Cooper and his
Oop.
family and the chicken coop. and they're on a farm, and it's such a interesting kind of setting, I feel like, for this film, because it is a sci-fi. It's set kind of in the near future, and it's all about space travel and like cool technology and everything. But you've got like this stark, like striking contrast right in the beginning of the film, because it starts off on a farm and they're growing corn on the farm. um,
Mhm.
and
It's a corn
so
farm.
it's a corn farm. There's corn outside. um, but it's also a really uh neat way of like showing what like a lot of the focus of the film is on, which is like nature and like I don't know, like the movie kind of has like this organic feeling to it, with like just the grand scale of everything. It feels very real. But then even like with the music, um, the central instrument is the organ, and Hans Zimmer and Christopher Nolan chose
Mm.
that. Hans Zimmer and Christopher Nolan chose the organ to have like this almost like spiritual kind of religious feel to it, because of how like unknown space is. But it also kind of grounds it back into reality and like gives it this kind of grounded, real human feel to it. And I think there was one point where Hans Zimmer was mentioning how the organ, it's almost like it has like this human breath to it whenever the instrument's being played, which is
Yep.
like really like fascinating stuff. But yeah, like I really like how this film kind of opens up with the farm instead of opening up with space. Because if you watch like any other space movie, it's probably going to open up with space. Um, but Christopher Nolan likes being different. He likes being a little quirky. Something that I heard Michael really likes with filmmakers.
Inside jokes play great on a podcast to people who don't know us.
Oh yes,
Uh,
absolutely.
I'm sure they know how funny it is.
Oh, they do. They do. They know in spirit.
Uh,
But yeah, so like what do you guys think about like the opening of the film and like kind of how it's kind of like setting the tone in a very like I guess like different way than you probably see with most sci-fi films.
I love how this starts because number one, I feel like there's a couple of reasons why I love the first act in particular of this movie. I think that the second act of this movie is huge and bonkers, and it's like it is the heaviest part of the movie. And I think for me, and then the ending is super crazy. But to me, none of that matters if you don't start like they started. And they started on Earth with humans, with the characters that we're going to be following for this movie. And they do a great job of like just through context. They never even give us a year. Like I don't think they give us like enough information to know, okay, so basically John Lithgow's character was a kid basically when we're living now. Basically he was kind of our age maybe, or even he may have even been like a teenager when like we are living right now, us. And so that puts it in perspective enough for us to know. It gives it kind of a weight, like, oh my gosh, this could be us in like 70 years or something. You know what I mean? It's kind of
Yeah.
crazy to think about. But then also, it just gives us like such a it effortlessly gives us these characters of number one. I love how Matthew McConaughey is just such a he's got a likability to him as a character. He's written in a way that's not like that I totally believe that Murph and Tom would both be devastated by their father leaving. But I also understand completely why Murph is so pissed off about everything. Like it all makes sense the way they do it, but just every single thing about like even when you see, I love that scene where they're meeting with the teachers, where Coop is meeting with the teachers, and he's like, what size pants do you wear? Like 32, 31, or something like that? I can't remember the sizes. And he's like, so you're telling me it takes two numbers to measure your pants, but it only takes one number for you to tell me that my son's not going to go to college and he's only 15. I love that. Like, he's fighting for his son. And then I love the conversation he has with Tom later, and it's like, well, yeah, if you wanna be a farmer, I think that's great, man. Like, it's
Hmm.
literally just like he's such a likable dad, and
Yeah.
so like immediately we fall in love with his character and the relationship. This whole movie's around him and Murph. That's the key to this movie.
Hmm.
But so instantly, I'm invested in these characters, and so for me, this whole first act is just so brilliantly done. And I too, I love the setting in the corn, kind of like Signs, but a completely
Yeah.
different vibe. Um, Signs is great, by the way. Um,
Yes.
but
Future episode. No,
yeah, hey, we should do all of M. Night's movies.
oh yeah. Oh
No,
man.
please, God. So anyway, I love the way we start this movie, and I just think, like I said at the beginning, I think the second act and the third act do not hit as hard if they don't establish this stuff. It just becomes a super plot driven movie of these people and blah 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 going through space, and it's really cool, but at the end of the day, it didn't mean anything. Yes, it means the world, because every time later
Hmm.
on when we literally lose years in hours, it like hits so hard because we know these characters and they do
Yeah.
such a good job of establishing them then.
Yeah, I agree. I really really love this first act a ton, uh, and I feel like when we use the term like world building, sometimes at least speaking for myself, I almost only ever let myself think of that in the context of like really out there, like Star Wars and Lord of the like like fantastical kind of settings.
Mhm.
Yeah.
But world building, like it can be in movies like this, where I feel like there is an incredible amount of world building going on right here from the very beginning. There's a lot of stuff it's asking us to buy into, and I think it's just done to complete perfection, where the plight of Earth is sold in such a believable way, and that's something that I think Nolan excels at in general and does really well here, which is to get you to buy into whatever the next world he crafted is. Like there's a special feature in Batman Begins where he's talking about like the gadgets that Batman uses, and somebody is like, in real life that couldn't do that. And Nolan said it's not important if this could happen in real life. It's important if you could believe it could happen. Like if the movie
Mhm.
makes you believe something can happen in real life,
Yeah.
that's what matters. Um, and that's how this feels. Where like um, you had a Tarantino talking about it whenever it came out, and it's funny he described. He said watching it kind of felt like a Tarkovsky movie because of how elemental and earthy it was, and Nolan said that Mirror was a big influence on how he
Mhm.
wanted to get that across of like the just the dust and the wind blowing and there's such a tangible earthy quality to everything, and it feels so intentional to what y'all guys are saying. Like it's a sci-fi movie, and we start with just fields of corn, and they always highlight the trucks are peeling off, and dirt is scattered everywhere.
Yeah.
Dirt is like a big theme at the beginning, where he talks about like we used to look up at the stars and wonder. Now we look down at the dirt and worry. And it's this constant kind of like we're just trapped among like around all of this very earthy dirt kind of stuff, and in a weird way all of that just makes it feel so believable to me. Like whenever they're having conversations of like they say it's the last year for corn, it's just like I'm like, oh man, we're losing corn, I believe it. Like it's just it doesn't feel like movie production, it just feels like this is the reality of the film, and I buy it completely.
Mhm.
And I
Yeah.
also like I love opening with the kind of the talking heads that kind of get revealed later on. It's like what's going on there, because again, it really sells you on the reality of the movie, because it's like it's kind of it's a story being told within the story, and so you're like, okay, we're watching a movie where like they're telling their own past to the new generation, which feels like something that we would do. You know, you go through these museums that we make about all these people talking about the past, and so just opening it up with them talking about everything after the fact, like in a way that's just reminiscent of like watching like Ken Burns or something. Like it feels like something that we kind of have with us, and then moving into this farm, and you know the questioning NASA's credibility at the beginning. Like it's just there's it's not like it's exposition, but it's exposition done well. It's exposition integrated into the film and naturally into dialogue and stuff. And so as the story moves on, we're never beaten over the brow with it, but we're just like, dang, like they're having trouble growing stuff. It's like a second dust bowl. There's dust everywhere. They're like clearly trying to get people uninterested in space and interested in here and now and the and this kind of dying cultivating industry. And like by the time act one is finished, you're like, golly, I've bought into every single thing this movie needs me to.
Yeah.
Like I am so invested in what's going on here now.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and I even love that part where John Lithgow is talking and he's like 6 billion people, if you can imagine that. And every last one of them is trying to have it all. This world isn't so bad. Like really puts it into perspective like how toxic this world can be where like John Lithgow is living like their characters are living in this place where corn is dying like and like okra, was it okra, what was the thing that was
Yeah,
like
Yeah.
I
was
think
like
that's what he said.
it was the
Yeah,
last one, it was the last crop of okra ever, and like corn is next basically, and like yeah, the dust everywhere, the earth is literally dying, and he's like this place isn't so bad compared to what it was. Like it's just a really interesting view too. So I just love the themes that they're going for at the beginning, and like I said, without endearing us to these characters, this whole movie could feel really cold very easily, and it just doesn't.
Yeah. No, yeah, I definitely agree. I love the way that they established the movie and the world and the story. It's like in some ways it almost feels like a documentary with like how just real it feels and like how believable. Like the dust like just destroying crops and like also damaging people's health. That's like something that like is very believable. Like I could see something like that actually like happening in our own like real world. Like we've had crazy stuff like that happen before. So it was like one of those like environmental like catastrophes that's like happening where like it is based in reality, and a lot of this film is based in reality. I mean, like to go as far, and like we'll talk about it more in a little bit, but like the science behind the movie and like how they used real world science to like make everything believable, even the space travel and all that stuff. Um, it's just really fascinating. I love like attention to detail like that in films, and Christopher Nolan is one of the best directors for that kind of aspect of filmmaking. Like any movie that he makes, he's gonna go all in on like the tiny details to just make it as immersive as an experience as possible, which is great. Um, but yeah, so like once we like kind of get past that like opening and like setting the tone and the world and everything, uh, we start like getting into well actually before that, I do want to mention whenever Cooper is talking to the teachers, uh, he's also talking about Murph and how she's excelling in school and like science and everything. Um, but she doesn't believe, or I guess like she doesn't like agree with the science that they're teaching in school, because they kind of have like changed the curriculum from all the
Mhm.
like astronomy stuff that Cooper had learned while he was a kid in school and like and everything like that. And so like he's like, oh well, like she's just been reading like my textbooks and everything. And all of this is like kind of like setting up where the movie goes in the future. And so yeah, from there, uh, we learned that Murph has been seeing a ghost, or like that there's a ghost in her room, which is like foreshadowing for the end of the movie. Um, and it kind of goes back to the bookshelf and how like the books are just like moving on their own and stuff like that. So she thinks that there's a ghost, and they constantly like talk about ghosts in the movie, even though it's like not a supernatural thing. But like before you even know where the movie's going in the end, like when you're watching it for the first time, you're like, ooh, like what is this? Like this is just kind of like there, but like it kind of gets like mentioned throughout the film in like different ways, and it's just really interesting how they how like Christopher Nolan uh plays with like this mystery stuff, because that's another thing that's staple for Nolan. He loves mystery, and that's part of the reason why I love his films. Uh, Going into the unknown. Um, so I really like all of that like stuff that he's playing with there.
I was just gonna say, like, in addition to just all the cool world building and stuff, I that was another thing that kind of immediately stuck out to me because, like, I'd heard my friends rave about the movie, but like the 2001 comparisons were all out there and stuff, and I just remember, like, as soon as the ghost stuff was going on, I was like, what? Where is this going? And then
Mhm.
like getting like it's kind of almost like GPS coordinates. Uh, I'm like, what? This is like we're not in space yet, and there's some weird stuff happening. So like,
Yeah.
what is this movie like truly about?
Mm.
And so again, like even before we truly like take off and get into like the bulk of what the movie is, there's just a lot of really cool intrigue happening.
And then
Yeah.
like even like there's a couple of times where like Drew, like you said, they're setting stuff up with this ghost, this ghost idea and the bookshelves, and then but I also love that they've also set up a bit of a mystery with like who's they, like they keep asking like later on, before they, I guess it's yeah, so it's the when Murph and Cooper at the station are at NASA, but they're like, who's they? They start introducing this idea that there's others that are leading the way to us, like that are kind of leading us in the right way or something. And it's like, what is this? There's ghosts. There's these like spiritual beings leading us to a. I don't what is this movie? It's so weird. And yeah. Anyway, I love the setup of everything here in the first act. It's so good.
But yeah, absolutely. So like I guess we'll like jump a little bit, like kind of towards the end of the first act, where uh we're getting to a scene where Coop and Murph are driving around their truck, and they find just this like secret facility basically, um which like we later learn is NASA, and they've like had this like basically like research center. I don't know what you want to call it, like their new base of operations or whatever, just chilling in the middle of nowhere, and they just happen to stumble across it. But they stumble across it not by chance, like it was definitely purposeful. um but they get there, and this is where like even more world building comes about, and they also like kind of start kicking in like the main narrative into gear from here, and it's just like basically nonstop from there. um but yeah, they find this facility, and Anne Hathaway's character, uh it gets introduced, and she's like a NASA scientist and everything. And then we also meet her father, played by Michael Caine, the legend himself.
Michael
um
Caine.
Dude, honestly, okay, just real quick, this is like a little tangent. Man, I miss him being in Nolan film. I
Oh,
need
I know.
him.
I thought the same thing.
I need him to come back for a Nolan film at least one more time. I need that. um but anyways, we're introduced to his character as well. And so correct me if I'm wrong, but did Cooper have previous experience with NASA, or was it that he was just okay? Yeah, that's what I thought. I just like couldn't.
He used to fly for NASA.
That's what I thought. I couldn't remember for sure. But yeah, so we like learn about that. You know, like, he used to fly for NASA, and he knows like Michael Caine's character. Like they work together and everything. Um, and so yeah, like this is where like everything's just kind of starting to get established for like the space travel. And that's also where we learn that, you know, like okra doesn't exist anymore, and corn is like the last like basically thing that humans have to like survive, um which is like just insane. Like it just like really sets the stakes for this mission that they're going to be going on. Um but one thing that I wanted to mention while I was watching the behind the scenes features, for like the technology in the movie, even though a lot of it is meant to be like a little bit more futuristic, it's very much like based on real life NASA technology. And but they wanted to like basically give it almost like this like weathered kind of look, and like kind of like NASA is like, yeah, it's NASA, but they just have like these scrap parts that they're throwing together to like build their stuff. They don't have the resources that they once did because the world is basically dying. Um, and so like even in this facility, you kind of you still feel that like before we even like see the spaceship and everything, uh, all of their like stuff is just kind of like thrown together, and it still looks cool, but like it's rusty, it's old, it's dying. It's almost like it's dying, like the world is. So it also kind of shows like how dire of a situation NASA themselves are in. You know, like they've got all these like cool resources and stuff like in our real world, but like even NASA is like down to like their last like what's the word I'm looking for? That they're like basically at the end of their rope as well. So it's just like really interesting. Um, and I like
That
how
was
they.
something.
Oh, good.
Sorry. That was something that I liked as well, seeing that, you know, it wasn't this kind of like, I think of every Resident Evil game ends where you go into a secret underground lab and it's like 2 miles long and the most high tech stuff ever. And I really liked that here you get it and you just kind of, again, it goes with that sense of like, there's a sense of believability and reality to everything where you're like, dang, this kind of does just feel like this washed up old NASA base.
Hmm.
Like it doesn't feel like they make it cooler than it could be because we want it's a movie and it's supposed to be cool. It's like us kind of office buildings. Oh, you've got your high tech stuff, but it looks like the stuff that we know NASA looks like that we've got images from.
Yeah.
Um, and something that I really loved about just the production design of the movie is one, they definitely go for what you're talking about, that weathered look of like this is used machinery.
Hmm.
This is non-government funded machinery
Yeah.
now. These are rundown places. These are not highly trafficked halls anymore. Um, but I also love that the production design for all of like the sci-fi equipment stuff is very like utilitarian. There's not a like Star Wars operates off of the rule of cool, which is like don't worry about if it makes sense. If it looks cool, then it works, and I love that for Star Wars.
Good
Um,
on them. Yes.
yeah,
Yeah.
like I said, do more of that, please.
Yep.
Uh, Here, you know, it's not about like what's the coolest thing you've ever seen. It's like Nolan described Tar as like kind of a walking fridge. Like it's the most kind of utilitarian design ever.
Hmm.
It's just like it's clunky blocks, and you see the way it moves, which looks that they use that robot to some really cool effects later.
Yes.
It never does anything where you're like, really? It's like, oh, that looks like I kind of buy that. That looks very believable. Um, and I even look like they even bring in a real world explanation for like the personality of a robot, where they're like, humans need something to talk to. They need something to joke with, something to feel connected to. It reminded me of a quote from Community, which I'm actually drinking out of my Community cup today. Um,
I
but
love that show.
Yes.
thank you. Uh, there's a quote in it where he's talking about Jeff is talking about how humans can form emotional attachments to anything, and he's like, take this pencil. If I tell you this pencil's name is Steven, and I do this, and he breaks it, and everybody goes, oh! He's like, because like we anthropomorphize anything and feel attached to it because that's who we are. And so the movie is in a way like brilliantly having its cake and eating it too, where it's like I'm a believable movie. I'm not. These droids don't have personalities for unexplained reason. It's not like Star Wars where you make a new droid and somehow it's like, this is my personality. Like, I kind of developed it like normal, like a normal human. It's like, no, they've got programmed personalities. Like, there's a real world explanation to all of this. And yet, you are still going to fall in love with this thing like it's a real character by the end. Because I freaking love TARS.
Mm-hmm.
And Case.
Oh, yeah. And so, like, this whole. It goes to say, like, it feels so real world and functional and purposeful, and like every design choice feels like there's a history behind why everything looks and sounds and feels the way it does.
Yeah.
And I even love that you can like I love to kind of even add to your point, James. I really like that they kind of show the what's the word here, customability.
Customizability. I don't know.
Customize it. That did not seem right when I was about to say it. I was like, is that the word? Customizability. So they show that by literally being like, they show these crazy robots at different levels of humor and honesty and like the banter going back and forth. They're like, what's your honesty setting at? And they play to that so well naturally within the story. And I even at the end of the movie they play with it one more time, and I was just like, that's great. I love that. And it even shows a little bit of a character change for him. But yeah, I love even that, just down to the little things like the personal settings or the personality settings of them. It informs the characters even through the movie. It's just so great. It's such an interesting way to do it, because you're right. It's they do such cool things with these really weird looking, and not even like they're not I wouldn't say they're cool looking. I mean, they do really cool things with them, but they're not like, you don't just instantly go to, wow, those are cool. They're not. They're just but the way that they are is just perfect for this movie. I love it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I definitely agree. And then like to go back to that scene that you're talking about with the pencils and everything, also like that kind of like analogy of like attachment, I also feel like is a reflection of like the larger story with Cooper and his family, like especially Cooper and Murph, and like their attachment. So like I don't know, I feel like that was like kind of intentional for them, kind of like doing that with the robots, but it's also like kind of a reflection of the larger story at hand. But yeah, so while they're at the facility, they basically like Cooper learns like that they're having like they're gonna set forth on a mission to space. They're gonna go through a wormhole, right? Was that what it was? Yeah, they were gonna go through a wormhole.
An artificially constructed wormhole.
Yeah, an artificially constructed wormhole. Gotta make sure you have that. Who's they?
It. Who's
yes.
they?
Yeah, so they're gonna go through this artificially constructed wormhole and find a new home for humanity. Find a new home for Earth. Because Earth is dying, the crops are dying, and I think they even mention, I don't remember if it's at this part of the film, but I'm pretty sure they mentioned that like I think Michael Caine's character is like, this next generation is gonna be the last if things like keep going the way that they go. I just can't remember the exact quote.
He mentions Murph's generation. I think he's talking to Coop. Yeah.
Yes.
So
yeah, and so that kind of it's a little bit manipulative and of like how he
A
like
little.
how he approaches that, but he's kind of like
I guess you just don't love your daughter or something. I don't know.
but that kind of like, because like we already talked about it, Cooper is a really likable guy, a very like loving father, that they already established that. And so we already know like he's like, yes, I'm gonna go on this mission. I need to do this because not only to save humanity but also to save my children. And so that really like sets the stakes right there. And he's like, all right, I'm gonna go on this mission. And uh Murph like finds out about it, and she's like absolutely devastated. And this is where like kind of the emotional groundwork is laid out for the rest of the film, because you know that he's a loving father and you know that his kids absolutely love him, but he has to go on this mission no matter what. And it's going to be a long time, and he doesn't even know when he's going to be back or if he'll ever be. So he kind of, he wants to spend his last moments on Earth, you know, with his family and with Murph specifically, because she doesn't want to talk to him. She wants to be like left alone. Uh, which like also that was just like super super believable. Like absolutely, like a kid would probably do that if they found out that their parent was just gonna go off in space and maybe never come back. Like that is like absolutely devastating. Like I can't even imagine.
It
Um,
drives the knife in even further when she changes her mind and he's already gone
yep.
too. Like
Oh
she
gosh.
runs out and he's gone. He's already pulling it away. Oh my
Yeah.
gosh!
That shot, dude, of the truck pulling away.
I know it's so
phenomenal.
good.
Yeah,
And
that's the thing. Like, I've never really bought into the whole Nolan's movies are emotionally empty. I can understand where it comes from. It's not one of those like I don't even get this, but it's just never been how like. I've always felt a sense of like emotional attachment and concern for characters in his films. Like I love the whole crew in Inception, and I definitely feel like I don't know. I get antsy, especially the first time. Like I was very invested in what was going on. But like just to talk more specifically about this family, I love like likable movie families. We don't always get that a ton. It's either like the just artificial happy families or just like insufferable families. And this this group, especially this father daughter relationship, is just like so believable, so heartfelt, so easy to like get attached to them together. Like her sneaking with him and him like just kind of letting it happen.
I know, dude. Yes.
I love that bit so much. And the scene where he's holding her and he's saying he's gonna come back. The way she just goes, when? I'm like, oh my
man,
gosh, dude, this is brutal. I need to find the actress's name, because whoever plays Murph, I should have had that up already.
Perfect. She's so good.
Yeah. Um, Mackenzie Foy. Yeah, she is like. I'm surprised she didn't like just completely blow up after this, because I think she's really, really phenomenal. Um, and again, it's like kind of what you were saying at the beginning, Michael. Where like you've got to build your emotional attachment before you pull him away from Earth. You can't just be like, well, there's nothing keeping him here anyways. So really, the stakes for him aren't that high. Either die in space, die on Earth with nobody. But like to ground him in this family that he wants to remain a part of. It's clear he's got a good relationship with his dad, um, and his daughter like worships him basically. Like he's just you you're so bought into this, and but it doesn't feel fake, and there's a lot of just different touches between them that I love. Like I love whenever he's in the NASA headquarters with them, and he's like doing the dad thing of covering her ears, where he's like, "You're not gonna kill him." Like it's such a believable little moment. That's just like, he's not just
It's
our
like,
main character. He's a dad.
it's like,
Like,
I need assurances.
yeah,
And they're like, wait, their reaction to that's so funny because like this guy thinks we're about to murder him. We're just NASA.
yeah, yeah. It's so good.
Yeah,
There's, man, I love it.
I agree, dude. It's the child, well, the kid actors in this movie are cast perfectly for their adult counterparts. Like Timothy Chalamet, I totally forgot he was in this movie.
Yeah.
And he was like, when I saw this movie, I had no idea who he was because he really wasn't. I don't think he was really. It hadn't really done that much at this point. And
Yeah.
but like when you look at the when you look at, first of all, just the looks between him and Casey Affleck, like, yeah, that's young Casey Affleck. I could see that. And then the same thing with Mackenzie Foy and Jessica Chastain. Perfect. Although I will also say I always thought that she could also play a young Anne Hathaway as well. Like I actually think that she could kind of play that, a little bit. I don't know why. I always saw the similarities between both of them. Yeah, let her play both. But um so the looks are perfect, but then also just the way that they really do such a great job of casting with the adult counterparts, and like how they really do feel like the same characters when they're although obviously there's a shift in Murph that happens over the years, but it still feels natural. Both Mackenzie Foy and Jessica Chastain just absolutely kill it, giving, because there's, as a young kid, Murph has such a warmth to her because of the love between her and her dad, but that love quickly turns to anger over and like bitterness over the years, and you feel that, but you also still feel that she loves him too. Like you
Yeah.
can't really let go of it. And
That's
like
what makes
just
the anger hurt even worse in that scene, because
I
it's
don't
not like
oh
baseless anger. It's just,
no, it you get it. You totally understand it. And like yeah, it's just so good.
But yeah, I really like the kind of establishing scene that they have where they're like looking back at Earth as they're like drifting away. And I think like this is whenever Anne Hathaway's character talks about love and how like they're doing this, they're going into space because of love. And that's like really the main theme of this story. It's about love. It's about the love that Cooper has for his family and for his daughter, and how he's, risking it all to like go to space and maybe not even find a new home for humanity, but it's all because of love. They're transcending space and time because of love. And I don't know, I think it's like a very like powerful theme. And it's something that's like very universal that like anyone who's watching it can be like, it's just like so inspiring and like powerful. And I really like it. But the quote, I'm gonna go pull up the quote real quick because the quote itself that she says I really like.
Is this it? Someone put this in the Facebook group on the thread about Interstellar.
Uh-huh.
Chris Ochterbeck, my friend, he says, I'm drawn across the universe to someone I haven't seen in a decade who is probably dead. Love is the one thing we're capable of perceiving that transcends dimensions of time and space.
Yes.
Maybe we should trust that even if we can't understand it.
Yes, that was
It's amazing
the
that he literally posted that like
yeah.
20 minutes ago, and I just saw
no way.
I just so happened to see it right now.
That's
so
great.
yeah, thanks, Chris.
Yeah, you just helped us out. That's awesome.
Yeah. So, like, I know the 2001 references have been done to death, but again, like, there really is a reason for it. Like,
Yeah.
with the whole circular station and just the emphasis, the patience both films have to let the machines work the way they need to, like the docking, the taking off, the tech behind it, the limitations of the tech. Um, it feels like, again, it was never what looks coolest. It was just like, how do I make this? How do I make people forget they're watching a movie and feel like, yeah, they probably got something like this, I bet. Um, and then just about like the idea of model work. Uh, I I want Christopher Nolan to just do like a tour across modern filmmaking, just like go and give a bunch of lectures to people about like stop with the 99% of your frame is green screen and then you've got a little splotch of a person there. It looks he's talking about like he had mentioned somewhere where like I don't care if whatever you're building is like one hundredth the size of what it actually is. It's in frame. It's a physical thing in frame. And he's like, the human eye is perceptive. It can tell itself it can tell itself whether or not the thing it's looking at can be actually touched. Is there a texture to that? Is your skin gonna actually make contact and kind of feel the outside texture on that thing? And you most often with CGI, like you really can tell it. Like my hand wouldn't hit anything if I just like put it out in front of me. There's nothing really there. But with model work, even when we're talking like, just like 12-inch figures that they're rotating, it's something that the human eye can see. And if it's made of the right material or something that looks like the right material, we're like, oh yeah, I'm gonna reach out there. It's gonna be cold steel. It's gonna like it just your brain tells you what it's gonna feel like, and then it tells you that it's real. And so it's all of this like behind the scenes in your brain stuff going on that's like not even really thinking about, but it's just kind of this loop, this feedback loop telling you like, yeah, it's real. You're looking at real stuff. It just goes so far uh, towards the danger of it. Because also I love that moment you're talking about where we cut to space and we get that quote from that poem, which I really like. It feels like it's kind of like the idea behind the movie of like we could stay and die, or we could rage against the dying of the light and literally go through the unknown.
Yeah.
This is probably going to be the end. And if it is, I will go out like raging against it for all of its worth. Um, and the last thing about kind of the section that we're talking about, and like some of the ideas you brought up, is I for a space movie, for like a realistic space movie to work for me, I've got to feel like space is dangerous and that it's truly being traveled. And if things are too convenient and if travel is too quick, it's like it's not dangerous anymore. It's just so fake. Um, a movie that some people really like, other people are more in my camp, Ad Astra. I don't hate this movie, but it's a movie that I think really fails on the front of space travel, and it's supposed to be all about space travel. There's almost like this kind of apocalypse now, but in space feel to it of like we're traveling to meet this one big figure, and it's all about the hype. But it feels like such a convenient travel of like we're here now, we're on Mars, now we're at the moon, now we're here, now we're here. It's like I need to. None of this feels dangerous, and in Interstellar, it feels like one wrong thing happens and we're dead. We are in the void of space. It takes forever to get anywhere. One wrong decision, one like we turn the wrong way for any amount of time and we're done. It's just you really do feel like you're just lost out there. Like you are in this giant vacuum. And there's a almost like a some not like horror movie fear, but there is that kind of like um almost like this existential fear of like it's like the ocean but a billion times worse. I think that moment, that kind of crossing the threshold from Earth into like we're there. There's no going back anymore. It hits you in a really really big way, and it maintains that the whole time. Where you're like, dude, space is freaking scary. It's awesome. I get why they wanted to give space this religious connotation with the organ, because you can't help but kind of be in awe of it. And what comes with that awe is like a genuine sense of like fear.
Yeah, the there's so many things at play here because they're like you said, there's so it's so big, it's so vast, it's this full of like just dangers. But they have this shot where it's just like they're I think they have this if I'm unless I'm just misremembering something, but I remember a shot where they're just going super slowly past it looks like a planet. I think they're going past the planet and it's just like they're going super slowly and it's like yeah, by the way, by the way, it takes 2 years just to get to Saturn. like our next stop is Saturn. We're gonna go to sleep till we get there, and it's gonna take 2 years. And so what they do so well is like, yes, space is beautiful. Like the planets are depicted as absolutely gorgeous. Whatever they're doing to make that happen, and then and it's dead silent too. There's no sound. Anytime you have a shot outside of a spaceship, it's dead silent. And and then but then also there is the weight of now the clock is ticking literally on humanity. And 2 years are going to be taken up just getting to Saturn. And then we have to go through a wormhole. And then so it's just like everything, the way they set this up, you feel the awe of space, you feel the wonder of it, but you also feel just like the dread and the fear of the loss of time. And it just weighs so heavily, and that only gets worse as the movie goes on.
Yeah.
Like by like exponentially worse as time goes on in the movie. And but yeah, I this movie and one more thing about this section of the movie too, just and really just any time it happens. I think I might have said something about this earlier, but anytime a anytime they are docking onto another ship, it is the most tense thing ever. You feel like okay. Usually in movies, they just dock. Like in Star Wars, again, more power to them. I love that about Star Wars, but in this, it's literally like you feel like you can see them trying to match it up just perfectly and back it up just at the right speed. And if it messes up, everyone dies. And you feel that dread and you feel that tension. And every time they do that, particularly later, the tension is just so gripping and it's masterful how they do that. And every time I'm just like, it's great.
Gonna work? I've seen this 10 times, but is it gonna work?
Yeah, every single time I still ask like, is this where they die? I can't. Oh, it's just this
Wait,
film
they
is just
die?
masterfully built. Wait, what?
Movie did y'all watch?
Ad Astra apparently. I don't know.
I actually didn't see that one.
I haven't either.
I heard it was a slog, but I don't know.
It's okay.
It's okay.
Yeah, but we do know some Ad Astra defenders. Byron.
He's the only one I've ever met.
um, but yes,
Gotta have him on here.
absolutely.
Oh.
We will at some point. Specifically for the Last Jedi.
Are we talking about The Last Jedi tonight?
Oh boy. But yeah. Anyways,
We can't let them know that we all secretly love The Last Jedi.
Hey, the cat's
dang it,
out of the
dude.
bag.
I'm editing this
Don't
out.
turn the podcast off.
So yeah, I guess to like kind of close out like this part of the film, one other thing they also establish are the like video messages that they can like relay back to Earth and vice versa and everything. And you know, like everyone else, like they've got their video messages and they're all like happy and everything. Like they're really glad to see everyone. But Cooper, uh briefly talks to, I'm pretty sure, unless this is a different part, I could be wrong. But he talks to Tom for a little bit, and then he talks to the grandpa, and then like the grandpa's like, "Hey, yeah, Murph doesn't want to talk. She's not ready yet." Um, which is like that's the last thing he sees before he goes to sleep for 2 years. So, like, gosh, could you imagine? Like, not only was she like cold to him before they left, but like even after they're already drifting in space for a long, he still doesn't want to talk. She's not ready to talk. So, like, dang, dude, like that weight that Cooper's holding, crazy. Um, but yeah, so they go under in those like really weird like tube things that I was talking about that are actual like it's an actual part of the set, and they like engineered it to like physically work to add enough immersion to the actors so they can like really like feel it and everything. So they go to sleep for 2 years.
I made
And
them go to sleep for 2 years for the filming of it.
yes, they actually Christopher Nolan is that dedicated. So yes, this actually has one of the longest production times out of any film ever. Um, and I forgot to completely mention they actually filmed this in space, by the way. Yeah.
They actually lose 23 years coming up here.
Yes. So yeah.
Found out who they is. It's just Nolan. He's making wormholes out there.
Yeah. You know, just like he made an actual nuke for Oppenheimer. He made the actual atom bomb. You know, for Interstellar, he's like, yeah, I'm gonna make an actual wormhole to travel in space. Um, so yeah, if you didn't know, NASA's actually like
Nolan.
they've been through that wormhole that NASA or that Nolan made. So they're on the
So
other
cool,
side
man.
of that. Yeah, it's crazy.
Cool. Thanks for this info, bro. It's
Yeah.
cool stuff.
But yeah, anyways, to go back to the movie, they wake up and they're about to enter the wormhole and go on the other side. And I think they've already established, I can't remember, but there was a previous mission that they had with two other teams of astronauts where they like went through the wormhole, and they had like two like potential planets that they were like looking at, but they lost contact with them, which is part of the reason why they sent them on this mission anyways. Really forgot to mention that earlier. So they decide to go to the first planet. I cannot remember what was the first planet called, because I know they like both.
I couldn't remember either. I watched it twice for this podcast. I just have it in my notes, the wave planet.
The wave planet, yes, sir. But yeah, like this planet, they get there, and it's just water. Like that's all it is. But also they establish some more like scientific stuff, which, like, I mean, like if they found a planet like this in real life, it would be super realistic. But time moves differently on this planet than it does Earth.
It's every hour they spend on the planet is 7 years on Earth.
That's insane.
Yeah.
It ends up being like 23 years when they get back.
Yeah.
Yeah. So they were
So
on
they spent
there.
they spent like 3 hours on the planet.
Yeah, they spent a few hours on the planet, which, like, could you imagine, like, everyone you know? I mean, like, I'm sure like there's people that Cooper was like friends with who like died of old age or stuff. Like, you know, like that's just insane. Like thinking about like how fast time is moving, but it feels slow for them. Feels like what it would feel like for us. That's just insane, and that's a real thing. I mean, there's other planets that we've discovered where the the time of it like orbiting around is like, you know, way longer than it is on Earth, which is just that's insane to think about. But yeah, so you know they're exploring the planet, and they spend a few hours on there unintentionally because, well, it's the wave planet, so there's tidal waves that are.
Oh, it's Camino.
Oh yeah, it is Camino, another Star Wars reference. But yeah.
The cloners.
The cloners. but
You
yeah,
can't help it, guys. We're sorry.
so Jango Fett, he's flying in, and this huge this huge tidal wave comes through, and well, first off, so it's Cooper and Hathaway's character and like two other astronauts, and one of the astronauts, he's gone. He gets swept away like immediately by like this massive tidal wave, and their ship gets like sent off course, and it because of that. But like this whole like sequence is just, I mean, it is the most dire.
Dropping.
It is a jaw dropping. It is the most like dire situation that they can be in because time is moving so fast, and they need to get off of this planet because they're wasting time. Like they don't even know if humanity's still alive. Like humanity could be gone for all they know. Like there's so many like factors into this why they need to get space, but they also lost a man. One of their astronauts went down, and like the visual effects here are just insane. And in the special features, the VFX artists were talking about like how much time they like spent into making it as real as possible and like studying like physics of how water moves and everything. Again, science, really cool stuff.
That's science.
But they also filmed. They actually like filmed this in. It was either Greenland or Iceland. I can't remember. I think it was Iceland. But they filmed this scene in Iceland, and there was like a like this basically like this lake, and it was like pretty shallow, so they were able to stand in it. But like as like it went along, like it was just like a vast like nothing of like but water. And it's like really cool. So they were able to like actually film like real water. They had it like on an actual
No one's done it
location.
before.
No one's ever done it before. But they were able to like key in all of the visual effects with an actual real location. So it just added to the realism. It's so fascinating how they do stuff.
Yeah, and I think it's also important to note that the guy I need to get the guy that plays the actor's name is David Gyasi. I cannot remember his name is Romilly, I think, in the movie, but he stays behind.
Yeah.
He doesn't go on this planet,
Yeah.
and he's like, I'm gonna do some research, and because he accepts like, okay, y'all are gonna be gone a couple of years. Y'all are gonna be gone a couple of years. Since you're gonna do that, I'm gonna stay behind and do some research, and so that I can help Brand back there, or Dr. Brand back home, or whatever, and relay some info. And so he's not with them. So that's just another element of tension in this scene because they not only we're not only thinking of the people on Earth as we're like here, we're also thinking of this poor guy up on the ship just by himself,
Yeah.
just floating around out there. And then
he probably doesn't even know like what's going on with them. Like he has no clue that they're about to die. Like
yeah. And then I love the setup of this scene because they land and it just looks like this beautiful water planet with mountains in the distance. But as we see, it turns out that those aren't mountains.
Those aren't mountains.
and just like it instantly goes from this like kind of quiet moment to like, holy crap, we gotta go. And the tension in this scene is just absolutely off the charts. And one of my favorite things is the choice to, and this is somehow the first time I've really mentioned, no, it's not. This is the second time I've mentioned the music, but the score at this part, as they get there, it's a clock. It's like, they very deliberately decided, we're not going to do standard music here. We're going to just do something that sounds like something that imitates the ticking of a clock, just to even more emphasize time is a wasting and we got to go. And so even that little touch just adds to the tension of this scene. And then, dude, the freaking organ as that wave is coming up, it's just like the most oh, I'm trying. The word is escaping me, but the organ is just that they choose to do there is just the perfect tone to say it's impending doom, and and every time the music swells in this movie, it just gets bigger than I've ever heard any score get ever. It's just good,
Seriously.
like every and oftentimes it is so loud that it drowns out the voices, and usually you care about that, but I don't in this movie. Like it kind of like actually makes sense in this movie at
Turn
times.
it up more.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like this, which is probably like Christopher Nolan's favorite thing. He's like, I don't, I don't know,
He's
I don't
it's
know what it is about.
hey, I'm about to drop another Star Wars reference. He like goes full on Kylo Ren. More.
Thank you. Do you think you got him? Um, so, but yeah, so I think that just in general, we've talked about, you know, the just the feeling of time in this scene just passing and moment by moment, and and I just wanted to highlight how the score even does that so
Yes.
well here. And then it also not only does it do that, but it also emulates yeah, this wave is like 5,000 feet tall, and so is this music.
Yeah.
Like it really feels like a wave of music hitting you, and it's just so well
It
done.
feels like you're being hit by a tidal wave.
It does, like it really does. That organ and synth combo in this movie is just deadly. So,
So good.
um, and then poor what's his name? Is it Wes Bentley? Is that the actor's name?
Oh yeah, old
Yeah,
Ghost Rider demon guy.
What's so frustrating, this is just a little nitpick I have about this. This is one of those times where like it happens all the time in movies where there's something happening and they're like running and they're all you have to do is get in the ship, but instead he like takes a second and looks first, and instead of just gets in the ship, and because of that he dies. So it's just one of those things where it's like you didn't have to look, come on man.
What a goof.
Get in the ship, what are you doing? But yeah, anyway, so good. This scene is incredible.
The tension in it is like off the charts because like you said it's not just one thing, it's like it's a layer of so many things on top of
It's
each
like
other.
an onion. It's like Shrek.
It's
Like an ogre.
exactly,
Oh, you already
dude.
said it. Dang it.
Yeah, I mean, if I had to compare this to any other movie, it would be Shrek.
That's very true. Hey, remember
Journey,
we
man,
did
it's
talk about at the beginning how like dirt is like a huge like thing in the movie, right? Well,
exactly the
Shrek
swamp and the corn, man. It's
Shrek,
all.
yes, exactly. It's all about Earth and
No,
that was perfect.
but
Oh
like
man.
the scene itself, though, like you've got what you were gonna say. I was gonna say like it's important to remember that while all this is going on, Hans Zimmer is just going ham on the music. It's insanely awesome. Is it called Waves? Is that the name of the track?
I thought it was called Time.
Wave.
But
I
could
can
be
look. I can look it up. I can look it up. Hold on.
Time is the track from Inception.
Oh yeah,
That's
you're
from
right.
Inception.
Wow.
Yep.
Yep.
Uh, I think
you
it's
keep talking. I'll look it up.
Yep.
but you've got this ticking clock, and he also like there's a part where it's ticking, and then it's going it's just it's this constant like rising and rising and then rising. It's just so cool, and they obviously established the way time works differently. So you're going down there knowing like a glance, like a wasted glance, is like months, you know. Um, so Nolan decides like, we need one more layer of tension. It's a water plane. Like if you've got like it's the stereotypical dream of like you're trying to run away from somebody, but your feet are heavy, you can't move. That's what it's like to try to like run when you're knee deep in water. It's just the weight. And so I start to get that like that secondhand anxiety in that scene really bad. Like water stuff in movies gets me. Um,
It's either
so
it's either called Mountains or Afraid of Time.
I think it's called Mountains. Yeah,
I
it's
think
Mountains.
yeah.
Okay.
Um, but so just the music, the idea that we're there, like any wasted second is gonna like just be months, and then putting them all knee deep in water where they're already in suits, but then they're having to like just trudge along. I start to get like, to me this is the scene where I get the most like, oh gosh, dude,
Mhm.
I can feel what it feels like where you're trying to you can't pick your feet up above the water line either, so you're just like, dude, it's such an insanely tense scene.
So
It's
good.
and then you get that cool little effect of Tars kind of rolling along.
Ugh.
The
Just awesome.
refrigerator.
The refrigerator.
Yeah, and then not only that, but then you have so like they ride this massive wave. We've already lost Wes Bentley's character. I cannot remember his name off the top of my head. Doyle. Doyle. We've already lost
Yeah.
Doyle. Then we ride this wave like a surfboard, but like the the scariest surf ride ever. And then they even continue the tension because yes, we're done with this wave. Now our ship is waterlogged, so we have to let it drain for 45 minutes to an hour. And then at the end of that 45 minutes, first of all, they have a great conversation on the ship. Brand and Coop do. Like they're basically like, going back and forth about you should have left, you should have gotten on the ship. And I see both parties' view. But she should have gotten on the ship. And but it's a heartbreaking, like really raw conversation with them. And then, before you know it, that time has passed, and the ship is not technically done draining yet, but another wave is coming, and they just kind of have to go for it. And the way that they handle that too is just like the most tense, like all of it. That whole planet, it's like anxiety inducing for the whole thing.
So good.
I feel like my heart rate's like up.
Yeah.
Just talking about it.
Seriously. But yeah, so after that absolute wave of just anxiety that you get hit with. I like how it was hit like a multiple times.
I accidentally hit it twice.
Yeah, we get back to the like space station, and gosh, what was his name again?
Doyle?
No, not Doyle.
Oh no, Doyle's
Romilly.
dead. Sorry.
Yes. Yeah.
Doyle's dead. Come
Doyle
on.
is dead. Yeah, Romilly. For some reason, I keep wanting
Not
to say.
Romulan.
I keep wanting to say Romulan.
Not quite the same thing.
Over.
But yeah, so they're back on the space station, and correct me if I'm wrong, but doesn't he have like a little bit of like gray in his beard or like his hair or something like that? So like that's just
83 years.
It's been 83 years. That's just like a nice attention to detail, showing like there's been a passage of time where like
Yep.
Christopher Nolan, you didn't need to go that hard, but my dude, you went that hard, and I appreciate it. Because a lot of movies they'll just gloss over that, but no, there's been a lot of time since he's been on that planet, or since they've been on that planet. So yeah, and so it's kind of a nice moment of like calm after an insane storm of just tension and anxiety inducing madness that water planet is. And they get to like wind down and chill out for a bit. And this is when we get, man, like one of the most emotional scenes I've ever seen in, where they're watching like the backlog of all the videos that they've had for all these years that have just been wasted basically. And you just see like one of the best like scenes in Matthew McConaughey's career of just like raw and pure emotion that is somehow like bringing out. I don't know how this man does this, but one of the most tragic things I've ever seen in a freaking movie.
Friend of the show, Jack Cornwall, his comment pertains to this moment where he said our post about what you think about this movie and favorite scenes and stuff. He said the whole scene when they get back to the ship and like 20 years have gone by, not just 7. Him watching the videos from his kids, difficult to watch.
Yep.
And it is like it's not just like the oh this is a sad scene. It's like there is that rawness that becomes almost hard to watch where you're like I feel like I'm watching a dad who just lost any hope of having like continuing his relationship with his kids. Like,
Yeah.
The heartache you see in his face when it's just it's whenever it cuts to him and it's just that kind of almost silent cry and he's just his chest is like you're like oh my gosh I can't this is too real too
And
real.
he also like I like how he like kind of fluctuates from like crying because of happiness, but then also
Yeah.
like because he's absolutely depressed, like just the way he's able to like go between the different emotions is like it's perfect. But yeah, he sees Kate like or like he sees Tom like all grown up, played by Casey Affleck now, and like he's got a family, and like he like it kind of like goes from like when he's still a teenager and he's like, yeah, I met this girl, blah blah blah, and then it cuts to him as an adult and like he's got wife, he's got kids, and like it just like really like perfectly shows like the passage of time. Like it's almost like he's like going in chronological order, like watching these. And oh man, it's so good, but
and
so hard to
and
watch.
and not only does it go in passage of time, it show the passage of time so well, but it also shows the passage of like the 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 degradation of Earth continues because like yes, you see young Tom and he's like yes, we're here without you, Dad, but I met a girl and I think she's the one. And then next time you see it's like we had a baby, her name's Jessie, and then blah blah blah. And then the next one you watch is like grandpa died, we buried him next to Jesse, and it's like their kids are dying, grandpas are dying, and it's just like the
Heads
reality.
are falling off.
They got no food. Uh, but it's such a brutal scene because it's like that's where it goes from. It's like he's crying, he's doing the happy tears, and then it quickly shifts to grandpa died. We buried him next to Jesse. Like didn't even get to meet his grandchild, and you didn't even I didn't even think about that till just now. Like, he didn't even
Yeah,
get to meet his grandchild, and like you said, Matthew McConaughey is just putting on an acting clinic, and then after all that, Murph comes on, and it's like, "Hey, Dad, you son of a," and like the first words that she says to him after all those years, and it's gotta just cut to the core, and the things that she says, like I wish. Oh man, I need to find the dialogue to that scene because the words that she says at some point are like they're brutal, but they're also like really like like this would be now would be a great time for my dad to come home. Like she has not let go, even though she's absolutely pissed, like
yeah,
bitter. It's eaten her away. He's eaten her alive all these years, but now would be a great time for my dad to come home and like
yeah. Well, one
ugh.
thing that she mentions in that video, is that she's now the same. She's like, it's my birthday. I'm now the same age as you were
Yes,
when you left, and you're like,
because they had that conversation earlier in the movie. He was like trying to console her, and he was like, it one day you could, I could come back, and you'll be my age, and
oh,
you'll be the same age I am now. And it was kind of just like an attempt to lighten the mood, but it just made it worse. And
Yeah.
now she's
No, it really made it worse.
yeah,
yeah,
and then now she's bringing it all back, and it's like, oh my gosh, it is. And what this scene does too so well is like, yes, we have a calm moment for the first time in a while in this movie, but even though it's a calm moment, it is absolutely devastating. Like because now because of these videos, we are seeing so seamlessly. This isn't like this is how much time has passed in the movie. Exposition, blah blah. This is like a beautiful way that they've already established that they're doing in the movie to tell us the amount of time that has passed while while we just like wrestle with the fact that we just lost 23 years of time. We already established that with or a dude man on the ship that's been waiting for him all by himself. Yeah,
Which is its own tragedy. Like,
yes, we cannot sidestep
that?
that poor man. Like he's like, I gave up a couple of times, but at some point I just decided that it was felt wrong to waste the rest of my life, and I was just like, how do you feel? How do you ever, after all that, you still come to that conclusion? Man, you're good for you, man.
Okay.
This scene, man. Oh, so brutal.
Yeah, seriously. Oh man, like that's also speaking about like this scene like just being so good but like really hard to watch. It's also like insane how we go from like the tidal wave, like the water planet sequence, which is just insane, and then we go right to this, which, you know, you're getting hit with a wave, like a flood of intensity, and then right after that you're getting hit with a wave of emotions and it's like, Christopher Nolan, give us a break. Please.
Yeah.
um
It's so good.
but yeah,
Perfectly executed filmmaking in this point, up to this point.
absolutely. So,
And then,
oh good.
I was just saying, I love. This is another one of those moments where like something happens in the film that I didn't know to anticipate, which is we cut from the video to her perspective, recording it, and then we pick up the story on Earth, and I was like, oh, I didn't know we were going back to Earth at all in this movie at this point. That was just another cool little, just with the editing of like, we're back here. There's still problems to solve over here.
Yeah.
Like there's a whole B plot that gets opened up, and I thought that was really cool.
And we get a jump scare of Topher Grace.
Speaking of people you forget is in this.
Yes.
Topher, what are you doing here?
Guys, this movie has so many acting titans in it. I mean, every character you name off is played by an actor that is just so built for this role and so built for many others because they're amazing actors. And then Topher Grace enters. Like, why? Why?
Because he is an immediately likable presence.
Is he?
I don't know. Maybe it's
Is he now?
Maybe it's because my older sisters were obsessed with him growing up. I've always had a soft spot for Topher Grace. I'm like, it's Topher.
Hey, you know, I love me that 70s show, so.
Yeah. How do you not love him?
Exactly.
I love that 70s show too. He's perfect for that show. Listen.
He plays the kind of like the nerdy side, like kind of tag along, like,
okay,
what are we doing?
Genuine question though. I really want to know if you guys. I want you guys to help me because I want to at least accept him in this movie, but I can't. What is the purpose of him in this movie?
I think it's one of the more like, you kind of see the function before you see anything else. I think he's there so that Jessica Chastain has somebody to talk to when she's just driving around.
Yeah. That's kind of that's kind of how I perceived it too, and for that reason, I think he needs. I think he's a bit of a pointless character for the most part. Like at one point in the end of the movie, we'll obviously we'll get there, but at one point the only thing he's doing in the movie is just continually yelling, "The fire's out! Hurry up!" Like he's just like, but like that's really all he's there to do, like to warn her. It's like Christopher Nolan was just thinking, we need someone eventually in the movie to warn her, but that's the only thing that he's gonna do in the whole movie. I don't know. His character is really rough for me, and I have a hard time. He does not fit at all. But anyway, that's like the first criticism I have about this movie.
And unfortunately, to me, I also like while we're on this part of the movie, like the Earthbound part of it, um, it's where really, I guess, all of my issues with the film take place
Same.
because I I think there's an interesting character to be made out of Tom, but I don't think the film ultimately gets there.
Totally
And
agree.
I think when we're talking about the wave scene in the water planet, to me that like it's all phenomenal tension. It's all so natural and organic. You got the water, the music, the waves, relativity, all of that stuff is going on, and it makes sense. The whole burning the crops scene to me felt like Nolan wanted a ticking clock on Earth as well,
Yeah.
but this one was way more contrived. It felt like well, the crops are set fire. Go go go! It feels like we're like he's hit a certain sense of pacing that he's trying to maintain of like I can't be cross cutting between like this heart pounding stuff and like let me just kind of scrounge around my old place, huh? What am I gonna find? It's you've got to like he wants to cut between two different things that are like really tense, and what he comes up with for Earth stuff is just like it's contrived. It becomes movie drama to me.
I totally agree because it's like at one point they go to it's Murph and Topher. They go to the farm and they're like you guys have to leave. Your son is gonna die just like your oldest daughter or son or whatever. And like I can't for the life of me figure out why Tom there's no logical or emotional reason to stay on this farm anymore. You're going to stay on this farm just because it's your family farm while your family dies here doesn't make any sense whatsoever. So it's like you said, it does feel very contrived. This is I totally agree with you. I think Tom is probably the weakest. Tom as an adult is probably the weakest link in the character development stuff in this movie. And it does feel very contrived here. I just cannot, for the life of me. They were there. They were talking about how his son needs to leave. They got to get out of here. And I'm like, and he's like, get out, you get out. Don't.
Yeah.
He's so angry, and I'm like, what is wrong with you?
Like they establish that like he's cool to be the farmer, but they don't establish him as
Yes.
like this super sentimental guy.
Not at all.
It's not the whole like I'm gonna die on this farm. If like
He's like, I like what you do. I'll do it. Like, but he's not
yeah,
like,
exactly. It's the pure
I
like
love our farm. I never want to leave our farm. He's
yeah.
never like
There's
that.
none of that. So the fact that he's like, dude, I would rather my kid die than leave this farm. I was like, where has that ever been in your character?
Yeah. Doesn't make any sense. I totally agree. And Topher.
I don't mind Topher. I chill with Topher.
Oh
Uh-oh.
man,
But yeah,
we're a bunch
anyway.
of Topher haters over here. Just kidding. um. So yeah,
Trash Brock.
gosh, I don't want to. I don't want to remember.
What?
Spider-Man 3.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Oh. Is he is he miscast in everything or is he just bad?
It's always cast right, and y'all are just blind.
Oh,
That's
no.
true. That is very
Oh
true.
no.
That is the enlightened right there.
Anyway, let's get back to praising this
Sorry.
beautiful movie.
Yes, exactly.
Exactly.
So I guess real quick, just one cool thing about the burning of the corn. So like we didn't even mention this. They built this house. They planted all of these crops for this movie.
Yep.
And they lit up a bunch of the corn.
Burn
And
this corn. feed people. That's what Nolan said.
Yeah. So after they like finished filming all the scenes on the farm and like burned a lot of the corn, they still had a ton of corn left over. So they like sold it all or something like that and like put it back into the production budget or something like that. I can't remember what it was exactly, but yeah, they sold all the corn, which is like really cool because I mean, who doesn't love corn? um,
Yeah.
but no, like
Big lump of juice.
it's got the juice, it's got the juice. Great song. But yeah, so that's just like really cool that they didn't waste all that corn for nothing. I mean, like, yeah, really cool, beautiful scenes and everything, but you know, they were also smart with it. Um, so yeah, and then as we're, you know, like on Earth, we get to a scene where I think this happens before we get back to space, right? Where uh, Murph meets with Doctor
Michael
Brand,
Caine.
Michael Kine. Yeah,
Michael Caine.
it sounded like he said my cocaine. Oh man,
My
my
cocaine.
cocaine. Put that in the soundboard. Um, but yeah, so Murph meets with Doctor Brand and he's dying. Like he's really old now. He's dying of old age, and you know, she asks him why. Like, why did you send my dad onto this mission? Like he's still not back. Like was this all just pointless? And he basically, yeah, he just admits it. He was like, yeah, like we just sent him there to basically die. Like essentially, like there was no reason for us to go back to space. Like they gave up hope
There's
on all that.
and B is Plan A.
Yeah. Which is like
Ugh.
heart wrenching for Murph, but then also Cooper doesn't even know that. Like if he would have known that, he would have never gone, would have
Mhm.
never left. And so that's just like, oh man, like I can't even imagine. And then
Aren't they? They're sent with like the, what do you call it? Um, hold on.
holding.
Where it's like, do what?
I said holding.
Sorry, hold on. Let me pull this up real quick.
Do y'all while you're doing that? Do y'all remember that scene in right before they go to the planet, the wave planet? They're having that conversation before they get there, and Doyle says something very like something that Doyle says makes it very much makes it feel like he knows that there is really no plan A either. Like it really makes it feel like he's kind of in the know. Do you remember that?
I don't remember
Yeah,
that off the top of my head.
I got the feeling that he was more in on it. I don't know why. I just had a massive brain fart. Didn't they? So they're sent with like pre-fertilized eggs, and like the idea was that
That's right.
they. It's not necessarily that it's like it's hope like the mission itself is hopeless or that there was no reason to send Cooper, but because everything's kind of riding on Cooper's mission.
Right.
It's like you've got to go out there so you can establish a new colony, but it's not really gonna be. It's not for us. We had to lie to him to tell him that like, hey, you might be able to come back and see your daughter, but
Yeah.
you won't. Like,
That's right. That's
Plan
right.
B was the fertilized eggs. But really, that was Plan A. We never had hope for anything else. It's just going to be, hey, go set up a new colony because we're dead. But if I told you that if you leave, you're never seeing your daughter again and she's going to die on Earth, you wouldn't do it.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like this. And again, so it makes you, it's a complicated character where you're like, gosh, there's a lot of scumbaggery there, but there's also a lot of understandability there at the same time.
Yeah. It's like one of those things where it's like, do the ends justify the means, I guess.
Yeah.
Which is like a really interesting concept to play with.
Kind of Luthen vibes a bit, huh? 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 A little bit? Maybe a little bit. Luthen from Andor.
Yeah, still not finished yet. Still not finished
I
yet.
know. You haven't gotten to his monologues yet.
Not yet, not yet.
You need to jump on that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
this part's heavy. It's like the idea that he just lied that much to everyone when he knew years ago that there was no hope for plan A
yeah.
is just like, ugh. Like at the same time, it's like, well, what if he felt like it's not like he didn't try to solve it, right? He tried to solve it, and plan B still saves humanity. So like it's the lesser of two evils to tell them or to not. It is actually quite, yes, it's manipulative, but yes, it's also understandable. Again, great character work, I think.
Yeah. There's like that's one thing that's great, even though, we mentioned Tom doesn't have the character depth that he probably should have. Like all of the other characters just have a great amount of depth and a lot of character
Yes.
development, and they're very like complex characters, which adds another layer of realism to the characters, which is really great. But yeah, so Murph finds that all out, and then I believe she goes to send a message, like relaying that information to them. But by the time that they do get that message, they're already on their next voyage to the second planet. Um, so they don't see it. But this next planet that they get on, again, really cool visual effects and everything that they do with this planet, and it's like this, like frozen over planet with like ice like in the clouds. Basically, it's like frozen clouds essentially.
So cool.
Yeah, so like the visual
Yes.
effects here are just like look amazing, but also like the planet design, like it's something that could be real. Like it's something that you could see it and it's like, yeah, this is real, but it's also otherworldly. Like whenever they actually land on the surface. But yeah, like it's oh man, it's just so cool. And they filmed all of this again in Iceland or wherever they were. And there's some really cool stuff that they talked about where there was actually they had to do a reshoot or something like that. I can't remember what it was, but they had to like get some extra footage. And so for the second planet, they basically filmed, like, because they only had a few days left, they filmed in the parking lot of like their hotel that they were staying at. And so it was just like a neat little like thing that I learned about it, like, you know filmmaking and like being a director is all about problem solving. And so it's like they were faced with a problem, they needed to get extra footage, but they had a little bit amount of time, so they're like, let's just film it in a freaking parking lot, which like you'd never be able to know, which is insane.
It's cool.
Yeah, it is cool. Um,
Yeah, that's cool.
yeah, that's cool. But yeah, anyways, so they get to the other ship from the previous astronauts, and all the astronauts are basically dead except for one. And who is that? Another jump scare. It's Matt Damon. Another
There's another
big
one where he popped out and I was like, what the frick? What are you doing here, Matt Damon?
Watch my movie Martian coming out the same year.
Was it the same year?
It was like the same year or like the year right after.
The year after, yeah.
That's right.
Yeah, it was very
Somebody
close
pointed
together.
out, like, Saving Private Ryan, Interstellar, Martian. Like, we've got to stop having to save Matt Damon. Don't let him go off by himself.
Yes. Freaking The Martian is a great movie too, though.
Yes, very good.
Yes, but yeah, so we get introduced to Matt Damon's character, and he talks about well, for one, like he had been asleep for a long time, and he actually didn't think he was ever gonna wake up.
Mm.
Like he put himself into cryo sleep without I can't remember what they called it, like without like a timer basically, because they could like time how long until they wake up. And he was like, all right, I'm going to sleep. Um, but yeah, he finds out that everyone's dead, but like he actually knew that. He just wasn't letting on to that. Um, and like the robot that they had, like it was just a bunch of scrap parts, and he like talked about how he was using it for like basically like life support and all that stuff. Um, and so they're like talking about like all the research that they were doing on this planet, and how they were sending probes down to like is like where they were, like even though it's like on the surface of the planet, it's not like at the surface level of the planet, I guess you could say, because they found this area where there's potentially like breathable air for humans, because like all the chemicals were like perfectly balanced down there. um so from there, they go and explore this area with Matt Damon's character, or Cooper does. He's the only one who goes with them, and this is where things get like really intense again. But like, what did you guys think about like the whole reveal of like Matt Damon and everything?
It was shocking.
Yeah.
It was a surprise. I think this scene is another one that's like really this is an interesting part of the movie because I don't know exactly how I feel about it, but I know that I know this, and I don't know if this is necessarily a bad thing for the movie, but I think Matt Damon's character is one of the most hateable characters in all of cinema. Like, I could not like the the amount of hatred that I felt for him. And when his turn happened, first of all, he acted great because I totally thought he was just a good guy. He acted like a good guy. And
Hmm.
then, but when the turn happened, it was just like laying on how like he was just laying on his like just I can't even remember everything he said, but it was like every time he would talk, he would go on this long monologue that just made me hate him so much more. And then like just like so he's so self-important. Like he's so like he just knows that he's so important. And I don't know. I can't stand him. James, you will be able to rationally talk about this more than me probably, but I just maybe the movie did its job and made me hate this character, but I just was like, this is way more than just a hateable character. This is the hateable character.
I I feel like I've got like two thoughts running in my mind during this. There is like the immediate kind of like, gosh, this guy, dude. He's the he is like our antagonist right now. Right now, like he is the ultimate threat to the characters right now. But there is part of me that also even kind of like understands his plight as well. And to go back to our Facebook post, um, Andrew Wright said one of his favorite moments was when Matt Damon emerges from his pod and immediately starts crying. And I think that is a pretty powerful moment, actually. And
Yeah.
obviously not part of his plan. He woke up and realized he wasn't gonna die, at least might not die, and just started sobbing. And it was such a believable feeling moment. Um, and there's actually a kind of a thread that spun out of that comment where somebody else had replied saying, "You hate him before the next hour is up," and Nathan replied to that and said, "Well, another great moment is when he says, 'You were never tested like I was. Few men have been.'" So there is part of me that still thinks like I because this movie is like feels so real and believable. I want to like truly try to put myself in his shoes. Not know like, oh, well, have you ever been? But like, okay, you're on a planet. You're like so far removed from everything else. and you're by yourself, and you're to the point of like such despair. You're like, screw it, I'm not setting my wake up timer. I'm going to sleep and I'm never waking up. And so there's like this wild sense of desperation to him that I understand, even if I still just want to repeatedly punch him in the face.
Yeah, because imagine you think you're going to sleep forever and that's it, but someone wakes you up. What are you gonna think? You're gonna see the people and like probably and cry because you didn't think you'd ever see people again. But your next thought's gonna be, I have a way off.
Yeah.
And like, yeah, that's your instinct is going to want to be to get off. And that's why I said, like, I think the movie did a good job in this part. I don't know how I feel about this part. It's not like I only hate this part, but it is like the movie did a good job of making me hate this character. I don't know if the movie did a good enough job of making me feel for the character, but when you really sit and think about it, I get it. I get it. But when I'm watching the movie, I don't really feel for him, to be totally honest. So, yeah, I don't know. This part's kind of iffy for me a little bit, but I don't know.
I think there is something, just for me, the crying kind of precedes all of the manipulations. He just immediately introduces him as like a desperate man who thought he was gonna die all alone on a planet, and that kind of just carries it forward a little bit for me. Even like his last monologue when he's like trying desperately to explain his rationale to Cooper, and like I get the sense that he doesn't even and he is obviously selfish. Like another selfish way, he doesn't even want to be like he doesn't want to be hated. He's not trying to be the bad guy, and so I've always felt his last line is, during the incredible docking scene, is that he's trying to justify to Cooper why he's doing this. He's like, listen, I'm not a bad guy, I'm not a monster, but it's just there's like, of course, before he's able to explain himself, everybody just goes. I know I did like the first time I saw it. I was like, God,
It's like there comes a time.
so incredible.
I'm like, thank you for killing him before he gets off.
But yeah, so I guess like real quick before we do get to that incredible docking scene, so Romilly was in the like ship, like the little like station, whatever they like the little like yeah, I guess base of operations that Matt Damon's character had set up there. Romilly was still in there, and
rest in peace.
And yeah, Matt Damon's character, he set explosives in there, so boom, he's gone. So now it's just down to Cooper and Dr. Brand, and they they're separated. So she's in the ship, like still in the ship and everything, and then Cooper is with Matt Damon to go explore the surface level. And then that's when Matt Damon's character betrays him and tries like killing him, and he tries like throwing him down there. But Cooper doesn't give up. He's a fighter. So he's like, no, I'm not giving up. And so they're fighting each other and everything. Which like also one thing I love about this, they're wearing these heavy spacesuits, and you really feel that. You feel that in the way that they're like fighting each other and everything. And so like he starts like cracking the glass on his helmet, so he like starts losing oxygen. I can't remember the exact line that he says, but Matt Damon's character is like, it's gonna be okay. You're gonna see like flashes of like your life and your family and like all the good memories and everything. Like it'll be okay. He's like in this like really twisted way, like kind of being like sympathetic towards him and stuff. It's like they they really make it to where he's just like this evil character, like a just really hateable character. But I really like the dialogue that they have there is great. And so he gets away and starts trying to get to the space station.
I have a note about music really quick.
Okay, yeah.
This is the best part of the movie musically. go listen to the track Coward. And by the way, that Coward is Matt Damon's character. And but the track is Coward, and it is, hold on, let me see. How long is it again? Let's see. It is 8 minutes, 8.5 minutes long. And it is the most bonkers piece of music that Hans Zimmer has ever done. It's like it's really eerie for a while, and it's like, because it's going while they're exploring and stuff like that. But once you get to the action part, there are these points in the score where it's piano is actually taking a front seat in the score. And there's this point where the music, and by the way, I think, if I'm not mistaken, this comes back in the docking sequence as well. But there is a point where the music where the piano is basically just going, it is the longest journey of like all the way up the keyboard, and then it goes like it's like the quickest, most chaotic but incredibly beautiful and weird music that Hans Zimmer's ever written. And I wanted to put a emphasis on it because you guys all need to go listen to it, or watch
Yes,
the
Gotta
movie and
re-listen
listen
to
to it, or
that.
just listen to it. It is awesome.
it's
So
phenomenal. Yeah.
that's, to me, that's my favorite part of this part.
Yeah. Yeah, gosh. So yeah, Matt Damon's character, he gets away, heading to space. And thankfully Rand comes by and saves Cooper. Because like after the station exploded, she's like, oh well, or the base exploded. Like, all right, I better go check on him. Um, and yeah, so this is where we get to one of the coolest scenes in the movie, which we've probably said like multiple times now. But the docking sequence here is just insane. And again, the score is just perfectly building the tension with the movie in this sequence. And like the visual effects here are insane. Um, like gosh, like whenever I see visual effects like this, like for a movie that especially that's like almost 10 years old now and it still holds up perfectly, like man, like there's gonna be a slight shade at Marvel real quick, but I'm like, man, how do they have these over $200 million movies and they're not pumping out like VFX that look this good? It's such a shame. But yeah, like this whole sequence is nonstop insanity, uh, and like probably has like just the most like nail biting tension in the movie. I feel like even more so than
100%.
the wave, which is already like super intense, but like because of like the intensity of the docking sequence, like we already mentioned before, like you have to like perfectly dock it, otherwise like if you make one wrong move, like you could,
We just established
yeah, it's like
that
boom.
one. Gonna be Matt Damon.
But yeah, no, exactly. um but yeah, like I don't remember what happens, but like the space station like starts like spinning out of control or something, right?
It's because they're out in space, and so you push it in a direction, and it's just gonna move in that direction. And
Yeah,
so the explosion that happens whenever Matt Damon is trying to
that's right.
dock just sends it into this spiral that just maintains itself out in space, and so
That's
they
right.
gotta
That's right.
Yep.
catch it. And another friend of the show, Ryan Wall, who we're all familiar with now, going through a Star Wars Cantina.
Yeah.
Uh, he said the whole soundtrack is awesome, but I can't watch the docking sequence without No Time for Caution. Or sorry, I can't watch the docking sequence with No Time for Caution playing without absolutely transcendent chills. And
Yep.
I
Totally agree.
wholeheartedly agree.
Yep.
Yes.
Absolutely. The tension in this scene is just like, I think you're right. This is the most nerve-wracking, at least as much as the wave scene, because they're both crazy tense.
Yes.
Um, this has the added element of uh the super fast spinning, station in space, and you have to perfectly dock to it. And so I love the idea of making him go so fast so that he matches with the speed of it, and so it's like they're just in line. And then the expertise on him as a pilot to be able to do that and connect, it's crazy. And that's another cool thing. It's just a small character thing, but they do a great job of making him a competent pilot. That's very evident every time you see him do anything. It's like this guy is a master pilot. And but they don't do it in a way that's like this guy is too good that nobody could ever be this good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
It's still grounded. It's just
Yeah.
he's a great pilot in the way that people can be. A
yeah,
great
that
pilot.
humans from
Yes.
Earth could be. And not in a Star Trek way, like a
Not
like
in a
an
Han
Interstellar
Solo way.
definitely not in a Han Solo way or a Lando Calrissian way. But yeah, anyway, I think this scene is just an absolute. I don't have any notes on it except for one note I have is moron. I wonder who I'm talking about. And then that's the only word. It says moron. And then the docking sequence is just a masterclass in tension, and that's all I got for it. It's just like I was not looking at my notes for this to like take any notes at all. I was just like glued to the screen,
Oh no.
afraid I was gonna miss something, holding my seat, holding my breath. Like it's just so good.
Yeah.
Yeah, to me, I already love this movie. Like I think it's phenomenal. This within it is like some incredible movies have those moments where like for this set of time, it's just like nothing else. Like it's Ryan used the word transcendent, and I feel like that lines up here where it's just like the movie at multiple times is operating on just such a high level, but there's this moment where this is master filmmaking at its peak. Like this is reaching towards the greatest we've ever done in movie making. It's so incredible. And I remember the first time I watched it, this was whenever some of my self-hatred started happening where I'm like, why did I not see this? Like it ended and I looked over at my friend who told me that I needed to watch it, and he's just like looking at me with this deserved smug look. And I'm like, gosh dang it, I'm an idiot. This is the greatest thing I've seen.
I am very sad for you that you did not get to experience this in the theater.
Hey, I guarantee though next year it's the 10-year anniversary. I bet they're
Hey.
gonna put it back in theaters.
Re-release
Please.
it. Re-release it.
Yes.
Do it.
Christopher Nolan, if you're listening, do it.
Yeah. And I know you are.
Yes, absolutely.
I know you are. Friend of the podcast, Christopher.
Yeah.
Yes, sir. I mean, hey, we already established, Jim Cameron is gonna be our first
Yeah.
first
Our
guest.
first guest.
That part will not probably make it to the final cut of the
We're running
episode.
short on time, and
Yeah,
so we
yeah.
had to sorry you came this way, Jim, but we gotta.
Yeah.
One more thing about the scene, aside from just being awesome, one thing about it that I do love again is the practical effects where there are shots where I'm pretty sure they built rigs to spin really fast so that they could actually point their camera at something. The close-ups of like the tubes lining up with each other,
Yes.
it looks so real. Like it's hard to not think that you're in space. Because like the way it's clearly not CGI. It's just like it's these two physical things spinning, and you just see it. Like gosh, it's those little touches. Anytime a movie can make your brain believe it's seeing something real, like you've done so much work as a filmmaker. Like
Yeah.
because we'll just fill in all the other pieces. We're like, okay, I get it. This is real. This is really happening. You got to line it up, dude. If you don't, we're dead.
And the idea that this is movie magic. This is one of my favorite. This is one of the best things about movies is that like this is one of the most tense scenes in any movie I've ever watched. And literally like some guy is just like going like with models and it's just like it obviously not just playing like he's just playing like an idiot like I'm pretending to do, but like it's
Maybe he was.
masterful. It's it's masterful how they're like the way that they know exactly what they need to do to make it feel real. and to make it look real in a camera shot. But when you think about it and you go back and you just think about it, it's like, yeah, that was the most tense scene, and I could have swore it was real, but it's just these little figures. Like it's just mind blowing that that was achieved, and it just goes even just more into everyone involved in this movie, not just Christopher Nolan. He deserves a ton of credit and a ton of praise for it, but like everyone involved in all the special features, Hans Zimmer and all of the people involved in helping him with the music, and like all the players of the music, and like every single person with a camera, and every single person that planted corn, like like
Yeah,
every person on this movie like did their best job, and it's
yeah,
just great.
absolutely. Yeah, so we're getting close to the end of the film here, but from the insane docking sequence, we go right into the black hole sequence, which is also
Oh, gosh.
like
This little
the
maneuver is going to cost us 52 years. A
Oh,
classic line that's become.
by the way, also, we just didn't even talk about it earlier. We have already had a black hole sequence, and it was freaking sick.
Holy cow! How did we not
Yeah,
talk
because
about that?
we got
yeah,
to Saturn, and they had to slingshot their way out
you're
to,
right.
wherever. And so, yeah, the way that the black hole, like this one is different. The one that we're at now is
Yes,
a
yes.
totally different thing. We're going to talk about that in a second. But the one that we went through earlier, the way that they visualize it was just like, yeah, this is what a black hole would be. Like
Hmm.
there's really no sense of shape or anything. It's just like this weird, I don't know. It's hard to explain, but the way that they
Like the
It,
human
visualize it,
eye can look at it and still not fully understand what
yeah,
it's.
yeah,
it like it almost like breaks reality with like the way that it like
yeah,
moves. And like one like really interesting thing about the way they designed the black holes in this movie, like a lot of it was based on like pre-existing information that we already had about black holes. And they do the whole scene where he's like got the pencil and he's got like the paper, and he like folds the
The
paper, and
classic.
he puts the pencil through the paper. Which, hey, Christopher Nolan really likes pencils. We're back to the Dark Knight. Ta-da!
I'm gonna make this pencil disappear.
Sticks it to the paper.
So yeah, sticks it to the paper. um but no, like that is just like a really good way of like visualizing to people who know nothing about astrophysics physics or whatever, like uh
Me, by the way.
yeah.
Yeah, yeah, me.
You know, I'm an astronaut myself. I know a lot
That's
about it
true.
actually, yeah. um
I love how you didn't say I'm an astrophysicist. You just said I'm an astronaut.
you know, I'm
I
something of
made
an
a black holes
you know,
actually.
I'm something of an astrophysicist myself. um but yeah, no, I mean, like, dude, now I lost my train of thought. The black holes, yeah, like it's just it's so cool how they design them, and like it's based, again, it's heavily based on reality of like what we know about black holes. They wanted to make it as
It's
real as
based on actual
possible.
equations.
Yes, it's based on actual
There's
equations.
that whole special feature about like the actual astrophysicist whose work they use, and it's like, yeah,
Yes.
this is like kind of this is my work right here that I just saw put on screen.
Yeah. Yeah,
Crazy.
it's really cool. And like even the way it looks, like, you know, was it last year, I think they like the new like what are they called, like the huge like telescopes that they have that like takes pictures. I can't remember what it's called. Like took a picture of a black hole or something like that. And like the way it looks in this movie is like actually like really reminiscent, very similar to how they actually look, as far as we know, like as far as we can see what they look like in real life. So yeah, it's just really cool stuff. But yeah, then we get to the second black hole sequence towards the end of the film, uh, which is just it's insane. Like this is where like you really can bring in the 2001: A Space Odyssey
Oh yeah.
references with just how like visually stunning and like weird and interesting this whole sequence is. Um, and so I'm trying to remember. So in this part of the movie, this is where he goes in alone, right? And he leaves Brand on. Does he
Hmm.
leave her on the space station? Is that what it was? Yeah,
They're having to like slingshot her to the new planet, and he
that's
kind
right.
of gets caught in the black hole.
One where Edmonds is at, the one that she loves.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
right. That's right. Yeah, I couldn't remember off the top of my head, but yeah. So Cooper's going in alone. He's going into the black hole.
Got TARS.
Yeah, he does have Tars with him, so he's not alone actually. Um, but yeah, uh, man, I don't even know like what to like where to begin like with this scene because I don't know.
Here, I'll ask a question. This is where the movie. If you hate this movie, this is why. Like, like I obviously don't. I love this movie, and this part works for me.
Yeah.
But this is where, if you're not a fan of weird, that you'll just this movie completely will lose you.
Yes.
Did When you first watched this movie, did this work for you? Like, for me, it was kind of a process. Like, I was, the first time I watched it, I was like, what the heck is happening? And then as I watched it more and more, the more I was like, yeah, 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 it works for me. And now I'm just like, yeah, it works for me. Of course it works. But now I'm curious about you two. Did you ever like dislike this part, or has it always just kind of worked for you?
Well,
I
okay.
sorry, I'll let you go.
No, no, you can go.
I I was just, like for like whenever the shot where it's all black and the water is like pouring almost like horizontally at you,
Mm-hmm.
I was like, what the heck? Like, there's something about that image. Again, like you can do a lot with practical effects. Dude, they got a dark room and they drip some water on the camera, and I'm like, what's happening? So like that's the cheapest way to like just make incredible
Yeah.
imagery. Um, and at first I was having this thought of like, dang, like whenever he's like flying around in the Tesseract, I was like, they were doing so great, and then they kind of jumped the shark, and now they're just being it's kind of a silly sci-fi spacey whatever movie. And I almost took it as like, oh, they went the easy way out because they realized they couldn't maintain this kind of like realism. And then as it went on, I was like, wait, I think it's the other way around. I think like this isn't the easy way out. This is the most swing for the fences. I'm going all out weird. He's flying around this weird. The visual is like the it looks like almost thread that he's like. It's such a weird look. It's like
Yeah.
yeah, this is absolute insanity. I really love um, whenever movies or games, because I think Mass Effect 3 does this really cool too. Drew. Uh, Whenever the
Not
very
Michael.
end of
Not
no,
a gamer. No, I'm not a gamer at all.
whenever like a story in its final moments takes a leap into extreme weirdness, uh, and like all just kind of, but not just like oh, in this weird and wacky, but like all like surreal, transcendent, like kind of otherworldly, like I don't know, like 2001 does it. This movie does it as well, where you're just like, I'm in a whole other space now, and
Yeah.
I get why it doesn't work for people. I've come to just like truly love most of the sequence. There's one part about it. There's one part that I used to make fun of, and then I make fun of, but in loving Jess now because it's actually come in full circle, and I love it now. Um, the idea that like he could have wound up anywhere in the Tesseract, but he's at her bookshelf, and it's bringing back this earlier theme of love is this unquantifiable thing that we don't understand. So, like, the him and I still say this all the time. It was love, Tars. It was love. It's just a
Yeah.
fun thing to walk around saying. And I was like, I would make fun of the movie for it, being like, "Oh, and if it doesn't make sense, just it was love. It was love." And I thought it was a cop out. But now I'm
Why
like, if
why
it's a
was
cop out,
Topher Grace in the movie? It was love,
it's
Tars.
love.
Love.
Like now I just think like if it is a cop out, it's a beautiful cop out. Like it's kind
Mhm.
of beautiful. Like I don't understand it, but do we understand love? No, but
Nice.
like gets. I don't know. It's to go back to Anne Hathaway's comments. Like don't understand it, and yet it's what leads most people's lives. So for him to like, I think as I grow, like as I get a little older, I start to get a little bit more sentimental. So I'm like, the love between a father and daughter brought him back. I'm like, yeah, screw it, it works for me, it works.
Love
Uh,
truly does transcend time and space.
exactly.
It's and I'd
Uh,
say that as in kid, but I'm serious. Like it is beautiful, and that's why it works for me too,
Yeah.
because this isn't just weirdness for weirdness' sake. This is not just Christopher Nolan trying to like outdo himself creatively. I don't think. To me, it works because it all brings back the whole theme, the whole reason this movie exists is because of love. Like they spent the entire first act of the movie getting us to buy into the fact that these characters love each other. And and this whole movie, every choice that Coop has made has been because he loves his kids. And 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 I just think that that is a beautiful thing, and I think that because of that, this crazy nut, like absolute nuts sequence, it actually does work, and it is like you really have to suspend your disbelief. Obviously, like he's literally the ghost in the bookshelves, like playing with the even the watch, and like doing Morse code on the watch, and
Mhm.
like all that stuff is pretty crazy. It's pretty crazy. But like they established the ghost at the very beginning of the film. They established that, and and as you watch the movie, and as more is revealed, it's like no, all this stuff makes sense, and it's because it's love.
It was love,
It
Tars.
was love.
that scene's also heartbreaking because it's also where we get the whole "Don't let me leave, Merv."
Yes.
Don't. Like, ugh.
Oh,
Stay, you idiot, stay. Like, yeah, it is heartbreaking. And so yeah, I totally buy it. I totally buy it. And then we get the answer to who they is. It's us, right? And so I
yep.
I think that's really cool.
It was us the whole time.
I did it, guys.
It was us. Banter fodder.
Yes.
Exactly. Well, see, the one thing though that still doesn't work for me in that sequence is the like reaching through time and space to physically interact with the watch. I'm okay with, but the movie never explains the logic behind the time loop set in the watch, where she can take that watch away from the bookshelf and it's just a consistent repeat of the pattern he set. It makes no sense.
Yeah, like
And
how
it,
could she ever look at that and know where the beginning was and where the end is?
well, that, but also just like how come, like he's having to physically reach out and touch it, but when she takes it from the bookshelf, the pattern of the Morse code is set in the watch. Like she
It's
could
going.
go halfway around the world, and that watch is still going to be doing the same thing. And
Yeah.
it made so little sense that there was a, I think Nolan and maybe both Christopher and Jonathan Nolan wrote something, this whole long piece explaining it, and I read it. And I'm like, guys, no, this is you literally introduced in this like extra material essay a whole concept that has like none of the, even if I bought this logic itself isn't present in the movie because they even invented a term for like the time loop that you the physical time loop you can set in an object. I'm like, you're inventing logic in this like post movie essay that was it's just it's the one thing that really like just nags at me as it goes on, as like she's getting so excited. I'm like, but how is it? What? How is it still on the watch? This makes no sense.
Yeah, I get that. I don't think for me that doesn't bother me quite as much because I've already suspended my disbelief. He's in the bookshelves as a ghost in
No,
a
I
fifth
buy it. I buy
dimension.
it 100%.
I'm
That's
totally
really
down. Like I'm like whatever. To me, the one thing that bothers me about this sequence is I don't, and I rewound this part multiple times just to see if I missed something. There's a point where she says where she's in her room, where Murph is in the room, and she looks up and she goes, "It was you." What made her come to that realization? I don't feel like the movie adequately gets me to see like she's looking in the room, she's definitely drawn to the room, and that's fine, but for some reason I just can't quite pinpoint why she not automatically, but why she all of a sudden just knows that it was him. That was the ghost.
it kind of goes back to this whole thing of like everything in
'Cause it was
space is pretty
love.
perfect. Exactly. It was
It
love.
was
Is that
love,
not good enough?
Tars.
Everything in space works wonderfully, and then Earth is just kind of full of some contrivances.
Earth in
Yeah.
Acts 2 and 3.
Yeah. Yes. Earth in Act One is perfection.
Yes, it is. Yeah, totally. I agree. I think I agree with that. And I think that is the only thing. It's a significant enough bit of the movie for me. There's a few things that add up to where this movie won't be a 5 star, but it'll be a 4.5 star. Like, and oh yeah, poor Interstellar, 4.5 stars. But like, that's the only thing that keeps it. Like, there's like a few things with Tom and the logic there with the farm, and then with this, like it feels a little bit contrived with this part that I just mentioned about her like all of a sudden realizing it's him and not it doesn't explain it. There's a few things like that that just kind of irk me that don't make sense about this movie, and that holds it back just a smidge.
It's like the strongest 4.5 ever.
Yeah, it's a very strong 4.5. Like I really want to give it 5,
No,
but I can't.
all
It's
else
a
places,
5.
it's like
Okay.
as you say, like in all else places, it is beyond 5. It's like
Yeah.
just stop there feels like it doesn't injustice, and so it's like, man, this. I feel like this movie is better than like every other 4.5 star movie I know, but I
Yeah.
just still can't quite. This stuff.
Yeah.
It's
like
a 5 star for
rewatches.
oh, sorry. It's a 5 star for me, but it's one
That's
of
why
those.
we're wrong.
It's one of those 5 stars where I'm like, I don't think a 5 star film has to be completely perfect. You know what I mean? Like
And I
I'm
agree
willing
with
to
that, too.
accept like it's a flawed masterpiece. And because everything else is so perfect in the film, or like beyond perfect, the flaws in it are more noticeable than I feel like other films where, you know, everything is kind of consistent across the board, I guess you could say.
Consistent messes.
Yeah.
And that's
No, you go ahead, dude.
that. As I said, that's kind of why I still can't give it the full 5, is because it's like it's the double-edged sword of being that phenomenal else, like everywhere else, where it doesn't feel quite right to me putting it entirely up with another movie where I'm like, I never feel that in this movie. You know, I never get well, I kind of got to excuse this one thing. It's just in this one, I always get frustrated with Tom every single time, and not in the way you get frustrated with a real person, but Earth is dying, crops are dying. We don't need the extra ticking clock. We don't need the extra bit of drama. Just feels like dead weight. The burning crops feel like a contrived ticking clock. She inexplicably figures out it was him. The watch thing bothers me to no end for some reason. There's enough things where I'm like, it's just there. It's just I can't put it out of my mind, and it always sticks out to me as much as I adore everything else about this movie.
Well, you know, I'm still giving it a 5 star because
Do
it was
it.
love. It was love, Thomas. No, but yeah, I seriously like this is a phenomenal film, despite his few flaws that are there. Um, which like just goes to show. I mean, like it just goes to show that Christopher Nolan, he really is one of the best filmmakers out there. He's got consistent bangers across the board. And I know Michael hasn't seen Oppenheimer yet, but
it pains me, you guys. I just can't. I can't tell you how much it pains me that I haven't seen it yet. It's just been the worst.
Phenomenal.
Yeah,
it's been the worst time for me to go to the movies in a while. Like it's just, Anyway, I'm.
Sorry.
But I will see it. I feel like you were talking about it earlier, James, and you said you even bought into it for a little while, like several years ago before this movie came out. The whole idea of like the Christopher Nolan being overrated and him being looked down on a little bit, like you're a film bro if you're obsessed with Christopher Nolan and all that. Like that whole idea is like it makes me laugh. It's just at this point, it's just like we've seen too much evidence of masterful craftsmanship on his part to go that way. Like you can. I don't even. We were having this conversation the other day, all three of us, and about like objectivity. Like there's too much objectively good things in these movies, in all of his movies, to really call any of them bad. Like it can work for you and it can not work for you in execution. That's fine, but like if you're not able to at least admit, yeah, but I mean it's a well-made film. Like it's just anyway, rant over.
It's phenomenal.
So yeah, we're a bunch of film bros. You heard it. You heard it here first on the Banter Fodder podcast.
Might as well call us the Film Bros Podcast instead.
Exactly. Nobody has that title, I bet.
Okay.
No way.
Nobody I want to talk to. I'm just kidding.
We're rebranding the podcast after the first episode, dude.
To bring it back to the movie real quick, and you had mentioned it earlier, Michael, about the reveal of it being us. It's where that's where another really interesting idea comes into, where this is a very deeply humanistic movie. Like it's got a lot of optimism about humanity and our ability to like save ourselves. It's something that I had been thinking about is there is a sense in which like it's almost like a religiousness to the humanism, where you get the intentional religious connotations of the church organ, and I almost feel like with the at least for me, the idea of the dust and the dying crops, there's almost like a plague feel to it all. Like there's just the earth is being plagued, and there is kind of like this Edenic promised land that we're bringing ourselves to. And so it at the end it feels like a very, very Nolan has an almost religious faith in humanity in the film, and I thought that was really interesting in a way that like it's hard to walk away from the movie feeling cold to me, where I'm like, I don't know, there's a lot of humanity in it, I think, to feel. There's a lot of love. It was all love, Tar.
There's a whole lot.
But and I agree, and I like that, because I think I kind of feel like in a lot of sci-fi movies it's a little more of a cynical take, and so I like the idea that we can save ourselves, that I like that idea of it being a bit more of a optimistic. It's not a happy movie, but it is an optimistic outlook on humanity, and I think that is a refreshing point. And like you said, James, it is kind of hard to walk away from this movie feeling cold because of that. I totally agree.
No, I definitely agree as well. Well, I think that that about wraps it up for It's All Love. That would actually be a really good movie title, which I'm sure probably exists out there. But yeah, thanks for listening to us talk about Interstellar for, gosh, who knows how long now.
Way too long.
Way over than we really originally anticipated, but
Checking out the
it
kinks, figuring things
Checking
out.
out the kinks.
Yep.
Yep.
Yep, this is our
We'll get
this is
it.
our first episode. We'll get there eventually. But yeah, thank you for listening in. We're on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts. So follow us. Leave 5 stars on both of those. Subscribe to the YouTube channel. And then we also have the Facebook discussion group, which we had mentioned before. It's Banter Fodder.
Which we still need to read a few comments from.
Yes,
Oh,
we'll,
yeah.
we'll do that real quick. But yeah, it's Banter Fodder, a film and television podcast discussion group, I think is what it's called, right?
Yes.
Okay, yeah.
Correct.
So you can find that there, and obviously we'll have the links to all of that and all the other socials. But yeah, I guess let's go ahead and read those comments real quick.
I got it pulled up. You want me
Yeah,
to go?
yeah, go ahead and
Want me to
go
read it?
for it. Yeah.
All right. So, and I'll try to maybe not do the ones that we've already read because we've already
Yeah.
read them.
Yeah.
Daniel Gaines says when he leaves the farm to head out to the launch and his daughter comes busting out I've mentioned this earlier, comes busting out the front door as he's driving away, gets my tear ducts working overtime every damn time. Yeah, I totally agree, Daniel. And as a dad, this movie hits even harder. I forgot to mention that earlier. Everything about this movie is even heavier having a son. Like it is absolutely crazy. Okay, yeah, so we talked about that thread right there. We talked about Jack. Dustin, my old friend. Dustin Purcell says, first off, this is my all-time favorite movie. I've seen it 8 times. My 9-year-old's favorite scene is the bookshelf the second time through. I'm not sure what he means by the second time through, but
I'm guessing the Tesseract moment when he's actually at the.
okay, yeah.
Real quick. Your favorite movie and you've only seen it 8 times? Listen
Some
here.
people aren't obsessed like
Listen here. I've seen Star Wars: A New Hope like 50 times.
Only 50?
No, probably like 50,000, honestly.
Okay.
Oh,
And
man.
then we read Ryan, so I'm gonna read Chris's again because he has more after that quote that I read earlier.
Okay.
So Chris says the quote from Dr. Brand, or no, just Brand. I'm drawn across the universe to someone who I haven't seen in a decade and who is probably dead. Love is the one thing we're capable of perceiving that transcends dimensions of time and space. Maybe we should trust that, even if we can't understand it. Incredible moment, and made me realize how powerful love is. Distance, space, time, even death can't contain it. Crazy. Agreed, bro. I just liked your comment. Yeah, I totally agree. And
Yes.
yeah, and guys, like we're gonna be doing that every episode. We will be posting in the discussion group about what movie we're about to be talking about, and we're gonna talk about all kinds of movies. We have a long list forming, and it's
sure.
getting longer and longer. And so in the Facebook group, we will be posting about that movie that we're about to talk about. And every week you can get your comments and your thoughts read on the podcast. So be on the lookout for that. And you should definitely go join that group.
Yes. And definitely leave some comments below on the YouTube channel if that's where you're listening in or watching. And you can drop your thoughts there as well. All right. Well, yeah. Once again, thanks for watching, and we'll see you guys in 2 weeks.